Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Blonde Cafe podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Villanueva, and I'm your 28-year-old millennial gal out here living my best life. And I'm here to help give you the tips, tricks, and tools to live your best life. And today you can see that we're doing our new setup. So I got myself a super cute pink chair that you can see. If you're not watching on YouTube, you get the vibes. I bought a hot pink velvet chair to be my studio setup, and it goes against my green leafy background, which is really cool. And then I also have my bookshelf over here that I'm working on, and I want to get it more in view in a little bit, but I'm just trying to figure out like the style of everything, the setting of everything. So we're working here. Work with me. But yeah, you get the gist. So welcome to our new setup. I also really want to get a sign that goes up here that says the Blonde Cafe. So stay tuned for that as well. But I'm so happy you guys are here and you guys are taking this journey as I'm doing it. So if you are not aware, I actually record this podcast in my home. I have a little home office that I use to actually work my 9 to 5 and do this podcast. So literally, and it's also like my makeup and beauty room as well. So literally like one half of the room is my work studio with like my walking treadmill and my like my raised to lower desk. And then I have my vanity beside it on another wall. And then on the other two walls, this is my podcast studio. So just wait, guys. One day we will have a professional, legit studio. But right now, this is what we're doing. This is what we're working with. And I so am thankful that you guys are here taking this trip. But without further ado, today's topic is trusting your gut and following your intuition. And this topic was actually brought to me by a very special person in my heart. And I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? Like, I really do have a lot of things that I can touch on when it comes to following your intuition. And the first thing that came to mind was moving here to Virginia Beach and doing it, even though I was a little bit nervous. I was, I had a job lined up, which is really great. And I had an apartment that I went to go, I found online and hoped it worked out for the best. I tried to do a little trip where I came down earlier and looked for apartments, and I actually signed one that wasn't in the best neighborhood. And I literally could not sleep that night. After I signed the lease, I was literally getting ready to the next day I had to go drop off my deposit. And I just could not freaking sleep. And I was like, what the heck did I do? Like, I don't know. I did not feel comfortable with that apartment that I chose. And so I literally called the leasing office the very next day. I asked them to resend my lease and I backed out. And so I didn't move into that original very first apartment. So then, fast forward, I kept looking online because I quite literally only had one weekend to come down and look at places. And then the rest of it was like finishing up finals at college and like getting my life together and figuring out like all the stuff that I needed to do to move. And so I started looking at more apartments online. I read a ton of reviews. I looked at different websites. I looked at like the crime map websites. I don't know how legit those are, but I think some of them are a little bit more like legit than others. Like some of them actually like have public records and things like that. But I did all of my due diligence of research. And I went for it. I didn't have anybody, go look at it for me. I literally was like, okay, this seems good. This seems legit. I'm doing it. I'm signing this new lease. And I did it. I signed the lease sight unseen. I didn't go tour the apartment or anything like that. And it worked out. It was my very first apartment. It was here in Chesapeake, Virginia, actually. And it's not far from where I live now, which is really funny. And I never in a million years could have pictured myself that I would be living 10, 15 minutes down the road with my now husband that I didn't even know existed at the time. And I wound up here. So that's a little bit about, the first thing that came to mind was trusting my intuition to move to Virginia Beach. But I'm sure there's so many things that maybe you guys can think of too, that when you listen to this podcast and you're like, when was a time that I quite literally bet on myself and I didn't know what was going to be the outcome? And that can be applying for a job, that can be going to a new job, that can be dating a new person, that could be getting married to a new person, that could be going to maybe go on a date where you've never even met this person before, if you didn't know anybody that knew them, like if it wasn't like a mutual friend or anything like that. Maybe you guys met on a dating app. Maybe somebody did introduce you, but they introduced you virtually, so you didn't actually know them. But sometimes you just have to take a chance. You have to do what feels right and not look back. You can't second guess yourself. You can't, backtrack and think, okay, what if I would have done this? Or what if I do this differently? Sometimes we get that paralysis by analysis. And I know I talk about that a lot, but that is so freaking true. Like for instance, like I followed my intuition of wanting to move here to Virginia Beach. I knew I wanted to get out of my hometown. If you guys don't know, I'm from a small town in Ohio. It's 10,000 people, I think. I looked it up one time and it's like 7 square miles. And I knew that I just wanted something different. I wanted new horizons. I went to college near my hometown, about 20 minutes away. And I was like, there is so much more out there to be seen and to be absorbed by me that I wanted to go. And I didn't care the means that it got me there. I knew I wanted to get a job before I moved. I wasn't going to move there on a whim without a job or anything like that. I knew that, if it didn't work out, I could always go back home. And that's usually the alternative. If you guys think about it, like if you take a chance on something and it doesn't work out, you can always pivot. You can always, course correct. You can do something different. Even if you take a chance at a new job in a new location and it doesn't work out, you can change that job. You can change the location. You can make those hard decisions, and it might not be the easiest path to follow, but if you continue to follow that path and just put one foot in front of the other and just trust your gut on what to do next, and it could be the littlest thing just popping in your brain, like on a random Tuesday in the middle of the day, and you could think, you know what? I am so over this. I am so over this career. I'm so over this location. I'm so over, maybe you're not happy with your partner. Maybe you're stuck in like not a great relationship and you're looking for something to make the leap. And the more that you trust yourself and the more you listen to yourself, the stronger that muscle is going to get. So you will continue to find yourself like just being able to pivot on a dime and being able to take those new chances and do those new things. And honestly, you got to release some ego along the way, and you got to release some sense of control and some sense of care, because that's usually where we stop ourselves, as we're like, oh my gosh, what are other people going to think? What if I preach to my family that, okay, I'm moving away, guys. Like I was the first one out of my family other than, my aunt and a couple other people in my life to move away, but I chose to do it. And I was like, guys, I'm going to do it. And if I would have, moved and then taken a step back and wouldn't have been able to really find my footing here, I could have went back to Ohio. I might have went back with my tail between my legs, and I would have said, all right, I messed up. I wasn't quite ready for that, but that's okay. That's where the ego comes into play. And that's where you got to release any sense of pride or any sense of, like wanting to seem or be perceived a certain way. You have to let that go, because you're not going to be able to achieve your goals or achieve your dreams if you don't. Same thing if you want to put yourself on the line to get a raise at work, or if you want to go for that new title that just opened up, or anything like that. If you want to be the captain of a sports team, if you want to start an intramural league, you have to be willing to put yourself on the line and say, it's okay if it doesn't work out. It's okay if people have an opinion about it. It's okay if people laugh at me or tell me I can't do it. You got to keep going, and you got to throw caution to the wind at that point. And I'm not saying like do it irresponsibly. Like I quite literally made sure I had a job. I made sure I had an apartment. I didn't just casually get in the car and drive and hope it worked out for the best. I really did do all of the like 1, 2, 3 planning steps that I thought were the most coherent and most I don't know, I guess sequential at the time. And I made the leap. I didn't have any money in savings other than the little bit that I got from college graduation. And I knew that I was going to be able to make it on my own. And if I didn't, I was going to figure it out. I was going to get a new job. I was going to try it a different type of way. And if I was way too homesick, then I would have moved back. But here we are 7 years later. And I am so happy. I am so happy. Like, I cannot tell you how thankful I am that I made this decision and I made that leap, and I didn't care. I didn't care what my friends said. I didn't care what my family said. And I made the choice, and now I'm here. I met my husband here, which I do believe that, everything happens for a reason, and somehow, some way our paths may have crossed at a different point in time. But I also believe that I was put here in that exact instance so that I could meet him as well. And I believe vice versa. He was put here so that he could meet me. He's literally from Los Angeles, California, and I'm from a small town in Southwest Ohio. There's no really farther that you can get. We are from opposite ends of the country, and somehow we both, through trips and turns, and we both lived different places for short periods of short periods of time, but we both ended up in the same location at the same time and found each other. And not only did we find each other, we knew each other a year before we actually started dating. So we matched on the dating app, Bumble, if you guys don't know. And he got deployed for the military. He was a government contractor at the time. So he got deployed, and we both kind of went our separate ways because we didn't really know each other that long. And then, what do you know? Fast forward almost a year later to the T, we rematched on that same app. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So I went ahead and I texted him, and the rest was history. We went out on a date. We went out before he left, and then we went out on another date when he got back a year later. And now we are married. And I really, I owe it to myself that moved here. I owe it to himself that he moved here, and really taking that leap and taking that chance. Same thing with this podcast. I know that it's not easy to put yourself on the internet, and I know very well that I could receive criticism or that people might be thinking what they want, and that's totally okay. And you know what? Other people's opinions are none of your business. And I know that you might be like, oh my gosh, what? I do care what people think. I do care about putting on a certain persona or putting on a certain, way about myself. But at some point, you gotta give it up, because at that point, you're not living for yourself. You're living for what other people perceive of you. And they might not even be being true to themselves. So it can be this whole whirlwind of things that if you don't trust your gut and you don't trust your intuition, you can really, really kind of get sidetracked. And that's where I feel like I personally also got sidetracked last year a little bit. And I took on a separate events business, and I enjoyed it. And, I felt like, okay, this is coming in my life for a reason. So this is an opportunity. I'm going to take it. I don't regret it. But then ultimately, this podcast was in the back of my mind the entire time. So as soon as I let go of that business, as soon as I was married and able to kind of have a little bit more time on my hands, this is what I come back to. And it was following my gut, following my intuition. Same thing, even if you talk about primal instincts of following your gut and your intuition. Think about that feeling that you get in your stomach when you feel like something's not quite right. Or especially as a woman, being in a vulnerable position at, say, a grocery store late at night, and you're in a dark, dimly lit parking lot, and you're walking to your car, and maybe something doesn't feel right. And so you turn on your flashlight on your phone, or, you kind of get your keys out as quickly as you can, or you really try to set yourself up for success, and you're walking next to a police officer or walking next to another woman that might be by herself. You really you trust your intuition in those miniature circumstances. And that leads you to safety, quite literally. And sometimes, you can be a little bit more I don't want to say paranoid, that's not the right word, but you can be a little more aware at times than others. Like, I know for me, if I watch a scary movie by myself at night, I like get freaked out. And so then that's like every like creak in the house is like jolting my attention. But ultimately, when you listen to yourself and when you listen to your intuition and when you follow just one foot in front of the other, you don't have to have the whole path figured out. And that's honestly the beauty of it, because you don't know the whole path. You're not supposed to know the whole path. It finds itself along the way, and you continue to find yourself along the way because you learn and you grow and you change and you pivot and you come to forks in the road. And that's the fun part. That's the fun part of the journey, where you get to choose your next destiny. Just like those books. I don't know if anybody ever read those books as a kid, but it was like giving you like different options. And it was like, okay, if you want Johnny to go into the ice cream store, turn to page 53. If you don't want him to go into the ice cream store and you want him to go home instead, turn to page 26. I used to freaking love those books. And those, like, honestly, I would probably still read one now if I thought of like a different one. But that is quite literally what you're doing with your own life. You're saying, okay, if I want to go on this journey, if I want to take this new job, if I want to go meet this new person, if I want to do this side business or do this new opportunity that's presented itself, I am choosing that destiny and trusting that I can figure it out no matter what the outcome is. And even if the outcome isn't your favorite, that's okay. You can trust yourself to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and move the heck on and keep going. Because what's the alternative? You're going to sit there and you're always going to be wondering. You're never going to know your fullest potential. And you might even subconsciously beat yourself down over it too. Because you're thinking like, oh my gosh, like I should have went for it. What am I doing? I'm so silly. Like you might be having that source of negative self-talk and you probably don't even realize it. You probably don't even know it. Versus if you do something and you don't even know the path and you do it scared anyway, you're going to be so damn proud of yourself. And I know from experience, you will be so proud of yourself that you even put yourself on the line, that you even took your chance, that you even asked your boss for a raise. Because what's the worst they can say? No. What's the worst they can say if you go into an interview and they don't want to hire you? Hey, sorry, we decided to move in a different direction. That's okay. That's not a big deal. That just means that that wasn't the journey that you were meant to go on. And there's something else that's going to be so much better for you. And if you continue to kind of follow, like I said, like if you continue to follow that intuition and strengthen that muscle, that's just going to lead you to so many more fun points in life and so many more experiences that you get under your tool belt that you're like, okay, survived that. Now I'm moving on to the next thing. Or maybe you ride it out for as long as you can and then you decide, okay, this is no longer for me, or this no longer aligns with what I want to be doing in my life, or this no longer aligns with, what I had in mind that I thought it was at one point. And then that's okay. You pivot again and you keep going. And I'm so unbelievably beyond passionate about this topic that I really hope that you guys decide to take a chance, no matter how small or how minuscule it might be. Even if it's something like you've always wanted to take cooking classes because you want to get better at cooking. Maybe you want to get better at cooking for your spouse or for your family. And you go to that one culinary class that you buy on Groupon for $50 at your local grocery store. Maybe they have like a little meeting room in the back or something. And you go and you take that course, and then it inspires you to take more courses and learn even more. And then maybe you think about writing your own cookbook. So then you write your own cookbook. Or maybe you want to open your own food truck or your own restaurant. There are so many different things that you can do. And even if you say you open your own restaurant, doesn't do so hot, you lose $25,000 or however much it takes, and you keep going. You get yourself out of that hole. You say, okay, at least I tried. At least I went for it. You pay that money back and you move the heck on. And I know it might not be that easy if you have a spouse or if you have a family, because if it involves money, a lot of times it usually involves your spouse or your family, or maybe it involves moving to a different location or, taking time away from them that you thought that you were going to be able to go to your kid's soccer game, but now you're not able to on Saturday mornings or anything like that. That's okay. You just have to realign with your own internal priorities and decide if that's okay with you. And you write down maybe top 3 to 5 priorities in your life and say, okay, this is a chance I want to take. Even if your spouse is like not as much of a risk taker as you, that's okay too. You can say, hey, you know what? I don't expect you to understand my vision for this. I don't expect you to need to jump on board or want to jump on board or want to work in the kitchen at my restaurant. But, just be there for me. Just try to, show some love when I need it. Or if I've had a tough day, just give me a hug at the end of the day. We don't even have to talk about business. Like, we don't have to talk about goals or anything like that. I just want your love. That's it. And if that person loves you, I guarantee you they're going to give that to you, and they will probably give you even more than what you expect. I know I am so lucky personally and blessed with my husband and my friends and my family. Everybody is always so supportive of, the next thing that I want to do. And especially my husband, honestly. He is the one that convinced me to get this backdrop. He is the one that convinced me to get this fancy microphone. And he believes in me sometimes even more than I believe in myself. And a lot of times I run into things blind, and he's more of like a researcher. So I like to use him a lot of times for more of like the details of the process and utilize his skills because he's a lot better at that than I am. And so we do a collaboration that way. So maybe you allow them to lean into your project, or you ask them to lean into your project in the way that they know how. Now, he's not sitting here recording this episode with me. He's not sitting here holding the camera right now. But he does the research to help me look at different chairs, to look at different microphones, to look at different backdrops. And that's the part that I love about him. And same thing with my friends here. Even when I had my events business last year, they came to a lot of my events to support me. They didn't necessarily want to drive to Richmond an hour and a half away, but they did it because they wanted to support me. And then same thing like my family. Like my dad is my biggest cheerleader and my biggest proponent. And he really helps me guide my decisions. He said if I tell him like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, I'm just looking for a new perspective on it. What do you think about it? And he'll tell me his perspective, and either I agree with him or I'm like, okay, that's cool. Thank you for your perspective and your consideration and your conversation about it, but I think I'm still going to do it. And that's okay too. And that's anybody that loves you is going to respect that. And if they don't, then maybe that's just a boundary that you need to set personally. So I feel like I'm kind of going on a tangent, and there's a lot of different ways that I can take this, but I really, really just hope that you guys take a chance, trust your gut. You can always pivot, even down to the minute, minuscule, tiny, tiny voice in your head that is saying, hey, maybe you should do this. That's your little nudge. That's the universe telling you, hey, this maybe is meant for you. And then if you take it and you run. Or if you don't, you don't. That's okay too. And if you've ever had like any sort of like I don't want to say like a visceral experience, but like a visceral feeling in your body, or if you've ever had like a near-death experience, heaven forbid, or if you've ever been like really, really scared and like genuinely afraid, you will know what kind of voice I'm talking about. Or sometimes and it could be even just afraid going into your first day of work and your voice in your head is like, okay, let's do this, come on. Or like maybe that voice in your head tells you to take a different way home from work. And then you see on the news that there was a crash right about the time that you would have been there in that intersection or something like that. That's your intuition. That's your little nudge that the universe is saying, hey, this is or this isn't meant for you. I had that quite literally slapped in my face when I had the whole car fire experience. I had that nudge. It was a very loud nudge. It wasn't a whisper, believe you me. But I had that nudge saying to get out of the car immediately. I didn't grab any of my belongings. Quite literally, I only grabbed my cell phone because it was on my lap and I was on speakerphone with my husband at the time. I jumped out of that car, and I'm not even kidding you, 10 seconds later, the entire front end was fully engulfed in flames. Now, it was already on fire by the time I jumped out because I was trying to get over to the side of the road as fast as I could as it was in flames. But the minute that I was able to take my seatbelt off, jump out of the car with my phone, the entire front end just, boom, just went up. And if I did not trust my gut instinct in that moment, and I would have reached for my purse that was literally in the passenger seat, or if I would have reached for something in the back seat or anything of the sort, I would have probably been very, very badly injured. And that's just a simple, visceral kind of adrenaline, life or death type of feeling. And if you've ever had that, which I hope you haven't, you will know what I'm talking about. But if you've also ever had it in just a minuscule sense of, oh my gosh, I really like this person, I want to go on more dates, and then that ends up being your husband, or maybe that ends up being a serious relationship that taught you a lot, and it taught you how to love somebody and taught you how to love yourself. Or maybe you do go in for that promotion at work and you do get that promotion. Or maybe you go in for that promotion because that little voice is telling you to, and then you don't get it, but then something else comes along that's even better than that. And it might not come along right away. It might take you a few months. It might take you 6 months or a year or over a year, but something that is aligned for you will be there. I promise you that tenfold. You just got to go after it. It's not going to be knocking at your door, walking itself in. You have to do it yourself, and you have to push yourself. I promise you. The more you do it, the easier it will get, and the less you will care about other people's opinions or how it affects something else later down the road, or possibly, or how it could have all these random little implications. You will quite literally kind of teach yourself to throw caution to the wind and go after it anyway. And you can always pick up the pieces when you're done, because when you're 90 years old, looking back at your life, you don't want to look back at it and say, oh my gosh, I wish I would have done this, or what would my life have been like if I would have done this? You just got to trust, and you got to keep going, guys. I promise you that. And with that, I hope you guys are having a great week. I hope you enjoy our new setup here. If you're not watching on camera, go check out our YouTube page. We are here. We are living our best life. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. You can find us anywhere. If you guys want to support the show, I have links in my bio. It's called Buy Me a Coffee. If you want to support, your donations will go to the Blonde Cafe sign, but obviously no big deal. Like I'm not asking you, to donate your hard-earned coins. I'm just saying that the opportunity is there if you want it. But I hope you guys have a great week. I will talk to you guys soon, and I can't wait for more episodes. Bye, guys.